It's Tuesday, September 23rd. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, well, it's gardening day. Todd Boland is here from the Memorial University Botanical Garden, plus something extra, words on an exhibition called Deep Roots, Crop Diversity of Newfoundland and Labrador. Before we get to Deep Roots, something about that makes me think about folk music. If you know, you know. Before we get there, horticulturist Todd Boland is back. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good. So it is gardening day. We will be taking calls. We will be taking texts and emails. We're going to have a discussion about the exhibit now for a few minutes. But before we do, rain.
Oh, what is it? That giant umbrella is still over the Avalon Peninsula.
Because I know the temperature took a drop, but
Yeah,
I think it's because of doing the gardening show. I noticed things like rain even more now, and I was just not really happening.
It's, right now, September's end up being drier than June, July, or August, which is really strange for us this late in the year to still be this particularly dry. The only consolation now is we're getting heavy dews at night, and the sun doesn't have the same power. So the little bit of rain that we did get in late August seems to be holding its own, serving in the soil.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will talk about what that all means and what it can mean, because I want to have a bit of a chat with you too today about putting gardens to bed and that look ahead for spring success.
There you go.
There you go.
It's that time
That's
of year.
Optimistic, though, right? Spring success when we're talking about not having rain. Other folks here today. So we've got two great people from the Botanical Art Society of Newfoundland and Labrador, Glenn Bishop and Margaret Walsh-Best. How you both doing?
Great.
Great.
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming in. So, Glenn, you're the president.
Thanks.
Margaret, you're the past president, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, welcome. And Aaron Rogers is back, farm manager at the O'Brien Farm. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Nice to see you off the farm and out somewhere else.
It's nice to be off the farm for a few minutes.
How is everything at the farm going?
Oh, great. We had a great season.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, mainly the focus is going to be, you're here to talk crop diversity, though, right? So we'll dig into that shortly. Pardon the pun, folks. All right, Margaret, Glenn, who wants to go first? Tell us about this. Tell us about Deep Roots, Crop Diversity of Newfoundland and Labrador. What is it, and where did the idea come from?
Margaret, you go first.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. The idea came from an international steering committee. And way back in 2018, there was a worldwide botanical art movement started. And at that time, botanical artists in like 25 countries in the world took on this challenge to, at that time, just reference the native plants of their country. And in that case, we did an exhibition then. We didn't do the national exhibition because that was in Ottawa, but we did our own. So we took on the international theme. And so there were 25 countries then. So they built a steering committee recently, 4 years back, to gather these 25 people from these 25 countries. There were 25 representatives, and they met online, of course. And then it grew to 31 countries who took on the challenge. They came up with this theme of crop diversity because they saw it as something that was important in the world right now. And I guess they all got together and brainstormed and came up with that idea.
So what can folks expect if they want to come check this thing out? What are they going to see?
They're going to see all types of plants that mean things to local people, plants that made a difference in their lives and how they sustained us over the years.
What's some examples of these types of plants then?
Something as simple as a crabapple.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
or
We're talking Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, partridge berries. Forageable plants.
You got a book there, Patsy? Can I see it?
Yes, this is just a draft of our catalog.
Sir Glenn, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and we have crops like cabbage and carrots and corn and the regular crops you see, and all beautiful paintings done in a variety of media, and it's a wonderful collection.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. Colorful harvest, right? You got like a purple cabbage there. We've got some squash. Oh, makes me think of my failure to grow squash this summer. So thanks for that. As I continue to turn through the page, this art is lovely. So you mentioned the range of it. What are the dates? Like when people want to check this out, when does it open?
It opens 2nd of October and goes till the end of October.
All right, right through the month.
Yeah, and it's at Memorial University Botanical Garden. And
Fall hours, folks. So check the website.
yeah, check the website. And it's there will be programming going on at the same time that this exhibition is opening. So you can find that out that will be listed on the Memorial University Botanical Garden site under events. And you'll find that there. But you can also check our Botanical Art Society Facebook page, Botanical Art Society N.L.
Oh yeah, I'm just looking at a beautiful painting of a rose hip here. This is quite something for all the different art. What for you two personally? Why is it so important for this theme? Like why? Like when we talk about crop diversity, and I know you mentioned it was an international conversation and it's really important. But what were your own personal thoughts on the importance of this?
Well, for me, it's utilizing the soils and the climate that we have here to, highlight what we have.
Yeah.
And what Newfoundland's capable of producing.
Margaret, what about you?
I just think that crop diversity is so important, and when I think of now all these wildfires, for instance, and people are losing places to grow, and over the years that's been happening, and there are all these reports about how many fewer farms we have now than we had in our province in the past. That it's just interesting to think of what kinds of plants people could be planting that, apart from the traditional ones, of what could be new that can grow here now. And I think maybe Todd can speak to our climate has changed, and we're in a different zone.
We spend time talking about this, right?
Yes,
So
we switched from a 5B to a 6A.
Yeah.
Most of the province end up getting at least a half a zone milder. I know there was one area that went down a half a zone. I don't agree with it myself, but so be it. But yeah, for the most part, Newfoundland's been getting milder. Our summers are getting longer, drier. We can see this year. Yeah. Whether or not that's an anomaly remains to be seen. But we're seeing that we're able to grow things here now that I never dreamt we could grow, like when I first started growing veggies 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, we broke the record. For St. John's, the record was broken this year for 20-degree days.
Exactly. We broke that by 2 days already now. Who knows? Next week, they're speaking for another day at 19. Well, that's getting pretty close, right?
Knocking on the door, right?
Yep.
So this is where we are. And that climate change theme through gardening, because you can't talk about gardening without talking about how things are changing.
And like I said, we're growing things in the garden now that I would never grew before because I knew that just wouldn't work here.
And
now suddenly, it's working. Now we might just have an off winter. Who's to say, right? But for the most part, we're getting away with things that we couldn't get away with before.
Yeah, because it's going to keep getting hotter. Yep. Like this is fact. Aaron Rogers, farm manager at the O'Brien Farm. So for this discussion and thinking of crop diversity, just give us, start with a reminder for what the O'Brien Farm is, and then we'll go into crop diversity.
Sure. So O'Brien Farm, it's right here next to the office for
Pretty
CBC.
Close,
yeah. Right up the street. And it's a 30-acre, 200-year-old farm. We talk about the history of the O'Brien family and use that as a backdrop for a lot of our farming programs and education programs. So our biggest, most successful farming program is our incubation farm, Newfound Farmers. So we've got 8 different farmers in various stages of business development, various sizes there on the farm. that have vegetable farms, livestock farms, beekeeping, and we try and manage to the point earlier, what a modern farm is going to look like on a smaller level, closer to urban areas, addressing things like food security, as well as working with the climate that's changing and things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a lot to think about. We have issues with food security in Newfoundland and Labrador. Demographically, we're aging, and plus we've got climate change on top of all of that. So then to think, how do we get farmers and farming, how do we shore up food security, get the limited number of people, more of them involved in it, and to start farming with the challenges. So yes, can we grow different things? Sure, but if we don't get the water for it,
Yep.
or it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Water, land, farm infrastructure, people. At the end of the day, it's a people-centered business. You still have to have human beings that want to do it and feel like they can make a living doing it. And
drones can only do so much.
That's right. And there's no robot right now that can wash our dishes. So we're certainly not finding one that's going to be able to farm, 22 different varieties of vegetable crops.
No, not happening. So why is crop diversity so important?
So crop diversity is really important on the farm level because you're looking for specific genetic traits.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the day, it breaks down generally from the genetic point of view and the geographic point of view. And so, when I think of Newfoundland, like the traditional foods here, potatoes, cabbage, things like that, right? So cabbage was hybridized probably like somewhere around Central Europe from mustard plants, right? Brassicas and things like that. And so it became cabbage, it became broccoli, it became cauliflower. Like you can't go walk out in the woods and find like a natural cauliflower. It's something that humans, used hybridization to make these types of plants. Yeah. And it becomes part of your cultural food.
Yeah, so not just pets, right? I'm thinking like bulldogs and like those types of things that don't exist out there. But so it's also cauliflower.
Oh, pretty much
the bulldog of vegetables.
Most of the things we eat, like pretty much all of the things we eat, have these wild relatives, and then within those wild relatives, there's a ton of different diversity. So different traits on, as they adapt to their environment. And so humans have taken those different traits and most of the time selected it specifically for taste, right? But for other traits as well, like how well they hold up to specific environments or pests or funguses or all that kind of things. And so, over time, what happens is we kind of get narrower and narrower in terms of what we have available to us from that genetic level. Sometimes it's geographic as well. Like potatoes is a great example of that. So, potatoes were hybridized by like Incan people down in Peru. We think of
them brought over, right? Yeah, to Europe,
to Spain, right? Spain, and then to France, and then over to England and Ireland. So, like when you think of and then to Newfoundland, So, had to go over the ocean twice just to get to Newfoundland, and it's such a part of our diet here. But and every time that happens, you can end up with more and more genetic loss, right? Yeah. And so you don't always. Sometimes you have the traits that you look for in one really specific way, like maybe it produces a ton. We get like big, beautiful, nice tasting, sweet, potatoes that are great for making French fries with. But is it going to hold up against, that blight? Yeah. And so being able to go and find all sorts of relatives and looking at the traits, those genetic traits that may hold up a lot better, especially with the changing climate and things like that. So going and finding the wild relatives. And then the people that have been working on this, botanists and a lot of folks that work with botanical gardens, work in university settings. Some folks that do it on their own have been saving seeds. The guy that saved like 1,000 different apple varieties down there in Appalachia that would probably just be lost to time otherwise. Things like that. It's really, again, it's important for humans going forward as we see this changing climate, to make sure that we have as much crop diversity as possible available to us, genetic diversity, so we can meet the changing environment that we're going to see.
So then when you see something like Deep Roots, Crop Diversity of Newfoundland and Labrador, an exhibition that celebrates in botanical art the resilience of nature and the plants that have sustained us for centuries, what do you think about that? Having art as this focal point for discussion, for understanding, for perhaps even an entry point to get into these types of conversations?
So, when Margaret and Glenn approached me, to me it felt like a really natural partnership. And a lot of it's because of kind of the way that we run O'Brien Farm. So everything kind of is along that backdrop of culture. And art is such a great part of our culture, but also a way to open up so many conversations.
Yeah.
So what they're doing on the art side is very much opening up conversations on the farming side for us, and then vice versa. It allows plant nerds like me to go and have a conversation with these guys about how potatoes walked their way over to
yeah. It's such an interesting conversation. Right? You're like, wait, they went where to where to where to where, and now
right.
they're here, and now we're here talking about this, and you'll probably see a painting of a potato at the thing.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts from either of you on this?
Yes, what I was thinking about when you just said about the potato might be there, but I'm not sure if it is. I can't remember. But the thing is that every image that you see there is an icon.
Yeah.
For somebody's story, somebody's history, somebody's production, and then somebody's study, because the botanical art people are people who have studied these particular plants, and many of the people there have grown the particular ones that they've done an image of.
Not seeing any potatoes yet, but there's a really nice earthy beet, which I'm digging right now. Very nice painting. Thank you. We're going to transition to the regular gardening day. Give folks one more reminder of how to check out this exhibition.
So they'll have to go to the Botanical Art Society of Newfoundland and Labrador Facebook page, and Memorial University events page, and Botanical Garden events page, and find out what's happening of all the programming and when the exhibition is opening. They get all that. And then we're going to be moving part of that exhibition to the O'Brien Farm Interpretation Centre after that in November. So you'll read that on their site and also on all those ones I just mentioned.
Yeah, and folks, if you're not sure, just call the Botanical Garden and be like, "Hey, we want to see the art of, we want to see the art exhibition of Deep Roots," and they'll get the information for you. It's through the month of October, and I was just thumbing through the little catalog here, and it's some great stuff. Thanks, folks. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam.
All right, so Margaret Walsh-Best, Glenn Bishop, and Aaron Rogers, thank you so much. And now we're... I think we've got one person waiting patiently and a couple of emails to get to, so we got to get to it, Todd. It is gardening time.
It was interesting when you were talking about the, our connection to the different vegetables that we've been growing historically here in Newfoundland, and keeping sort of the genetics of some of these older varieties, right? It's basically the same thing we've been doing with our heritage garden. Yeah. Right? Just from a flower perspective, is keeping a hold of these old varieties that were brought here. Our plants at the Heritage Garden all have a story. Most of the plants are of European descent, which makes perfect sense. But things like phlox, which have been growing here in Newfoundland for over 100 years, originated down in the eastern U.S. And they didn't come from the eastern U.S. to Newfoundland. They went from the eastern U.S. to the gardens of England and Europe, and then back to Newfoundland, right? So you're talking about the potato coming from Chile to Spain and then eventually coming back to Newfoundland again. There's a lot of garden plants that went the exact same route in many respects. In fact, we do have one heritage plant which does originate from Peru.
Oh, wild.
Right? So, and that's a flower as opposed to a potato, right? So the analogy is just perfectly.
Yeah. And I think the story with hydrangea too. Like you look at, I remember watching some of the different types in Japan that you'd see, and the different varieties and where like they came from. And so there's one that went somewhere and came back, and it looked completely different after like years and years and years.
Well, there you go. Right? Because we've been hybridizing, just like you're hybridizing the veggies to make them, either more productive or larger or sweeter, whatever the case. We're doing the same thing with the flowers, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to make them larger, more floriferous. whatever the case may be. But we're also very important to know that ancient genetics to breed in more resistance to diseases, because a lot of the modern day plants are pretty weak, right? And I suspect a lot of the modern day veggies are the same idea, because they are so highly bred that now the breeders are going back to the old ancestors, trying to breed in that vigor back into the modern day varieties in the hopes that we're going to get a crop and or a flower that's like modern day ones, but yet has the toughness of the old ancestors.
It is gardening day. You're listening to Todd Boland there. The lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Email us, thesignal@cbc.ca. So as we're shifting some folks out and you're still staying here, so thanks again, folks, for that. I mean, it was amazing discussion about deep roots, crop diversity of Newfoundland and Labrador. Before you shift chairs, we've got George Williams on the line. Let's listen to George. And,
Okay,
hi,
George.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for taking my call, Adam. And
Thanks for waiting.
First of all, a little comment on biodiversity. I think the biggest problem with monoculture is that if you get any kind of fungal disease or pests and stuff like that, that doesn't actually wipe out the whole plantation or whatever. And I spent 7 years traveling the world, mostly in Asia and Southeast Asia, and it's amazing how you go down through places like Malaysia and Sumatra and Indonesia and that, and you can go for like miles and miles and miles, and there's all you'll see is palm plantations and and in other places banana plantations and stuff like that. So as soon as you get some disease come in or fungus or something, it can wipe out. I assume it could wipe out the whole thing.
Yeah, no, 100. Yeah, no, we're still here, and your mic's on, right? I think so. Yeah.
Todd?
Yeah. Go for it.
Go ahead, George.
A few questions for you, please. First of all, I'd like for you to speak on in Newfoundland we have two different dogberry trees. I think it's the American ash and showy ash or something. Can you just describe the difference between the two main dogberry trees we have in Newfoundland?
Yeah, so we have the American mountain ash, and we have the showy mountain ash. Showy mountain ash generally has the leaflets are generally a little bit shorter in length, whereas the American mountain ash has much longer, thinner leaflets. It's not an easy, I mean, if I had the two of them side by side, it's easy for me to tell them apart. It's more challenging just over the radio to try to explain what the difference is between, because it is subtle between the two.
Isn't one more like a trunk, whereas the other one like a shrub?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of variation there. So I wouldn't use that as being the final way of separating the two. Really, the difference is primarily in the structure of the leaves themselves, and even the winter buds. I think the Americana, the winter buds are just black and sticky with no hairs at all, but the showy mountain ash has winter buds that do have a little bit of a silvery white hairs on the overwintering buds.
Now, isn't the berries different color?
Maybe a subtle difference in the color. Again, that's not something I would really go by. Again, from a botanical point of view, it's really the foliage you need to look at.
Do you know if there's any difference in the quality or of the berries? If there's any one, like for instance, I pick a lot of them and feed the birds, and I'm just wondering if, like for instance, when I feed the birds, if I'm using sunflower seeds, I'll use the black oil sunflower seeds because it's got a higher fat content, so it keeps the birds warmer. And I'm just wondering if there's any difference, in the berries between the two dogberries.
I have not read anything saying that one would have more nutritive value, we'll say, than another. Here in St. John's, of course, we have the European mountain ash, that's competing with the two native ones, and it seems like the birds will go after either one of those three quite equally.
Todd, I'd like to ask you, I cut down a lilac tree, and a couple of my friends wanted some cuttings from it. I didn't get cuttings, some plants from it, and I normally wouldn't do it this time of year, but I just wanted to get rid of it to prepare for next year, planting something else there next year. And so I of course, it's been there for probably over 30 years, so it's got a massive root root structure. But I managed to take some little saplings off that was coming up from the roots, and cut the main roots and put them in sort of like a hanging basket type of thing. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the best thing to do? Should I wait for a few weeks and try to get a little root established, or do you think can I keep them in that all winter, or should I put them in the ground right now?
Well, of course, it all depends on how long ago was it you put the pieces in there.
Oh, just a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. And they had no roots at this stage when you first put them in?
Yes, I cut them off from the main root structure, but they do have some little fine feeder roots on them.
Oh, okay. So what I would do is I would leave them in those pots for the winter and assess the situation in the spring of the year, because at this point now they're not going to be putting on a lot of new roots. It's getting a bit late in the year now. For that, I mean, had you done this back earlier in the summer, you might have had a much better success rate. But, if they do have a few roots and you already have them in the pot now, I would just leave them in the pot, move it into a fairly sheltered spot up against a fence or underneath a back deck, someplace like that, and leave them there for the winter. And then if they start to leaf out in the spring of the year, well, then you'll know that they successfully made it through the winter and obviously have a root system at that point. If you don't see any signs of bud swelling in the spring of the year, well, then you can assume from that they didn't take.
Yeah, I was thinking if I kept them in the pots for the winter, maybe I'd just sink the pots in the ground.
Yes, exactly. That'll work perfectly well as well. Yeah.
Finally, Todd, please. I've got some golden chain trees laburnums that I planted from seeds probably 25 years ago, and some friends was looking for some seeds, so I got seeds off them. What do you think is the best to plant the seeds now? Keep them, freeze them? What do you think is the best?
Here in the garden and here around the city, they just sort of self-seed all over the place. So, they could be sown now, left outside for the winter, and they'll probably just germinate on their own come the spring of the year. Now, the main trick for those is actually to nick the seeds. They do like to have their seeds nicked because they have a hard seed coat on them. So what you can do is take the seeds now, put them into a jar with a bit of coarse sand, shake that jar for like a minute, and that sand will nick the seed coat. Then you can go ahead, sow them into a pot and leave them outside for the winter, and they should germinate best kind come the spring.
Wow. I think I think that we got two main varieties of the laburnum here. I think it's the alpinum and Vasi.
That's right.
I think around St. John's you got a lot of the Vasi, and I think here in Central we got a lot of the alpinum, which is I do believe is a hardier variety.
Yes, the alpinum is the hardier one of the two. Yeah.
Well, thank you very kindly, folks, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the gardening season. Thank you.
Thanks, George. All right, George Williams there calling from Gander. Bit of a slight delay today on the phone line for some reason.
Yeah, that was very odd.
Yeah, gremlins, gremlins in the system. All right, we're here. It's gardening day, and we are getting down there. Just to give you an update on, where's my calendar? I believe so there's no show next week, and that is because it's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Yep.
Then we've got gardening on the 7th and gardening on the 14th. And
you're almost finished up. That's it.
Yeah, it kind of makes me sad.
Yeah.
Right, gardening season.
Where does summer go?
What happened? I feel like we just started and we're winding down.
Well, the nurseries already have their bulbs out, so
right.
Now is the time to start thinking about next year.
Yeah, I gotta start thinking about garlic.
There you go. Yes. Well, I usually don't sow the garlic until about middle of October.
Yeah.
But I've already we harvested ages ago. The ones I'm going to sow are in dry storage right now, ready to go. As soon as the weather starts to get a little bit cooler, because basically you treat your garlic the same way as you do your tulips and your daffodils, right? Yeah. So there's no rush, even though the stores may have their bulbs out by now. There's no big rush that you have to sow them, plant them immediately. But in actual fact, the earlier you plant them, the more root system they'll develop before the ground freezes, and that usually does result in much stronger plants come next spring.
So we're entering the garlic zone.
We're entering that garlic zone. We're entering the tulip and daffodil season
Yeah, yeah.
zone. Yeah, for sure.
It's a nice. The look ahead is nice. Because
Well,
that, hey,
you can sort of
something's
sit back now and you think about your successes and your failures for this year. And like I said, you're always, as gardeners, we're always thinking ahead. Like right now, you're going to be thinking about your tulips and your daffodils, stuff like that. And then come, January, you'll be looking into seed catalogs and seeing what kind of veggies or annuals you want to grow for the season. And then if you have a greenhouse or whatever, or a nice, cool, sunny window, by March, you could be starting to sow things like geraniums that need a long growing season before it'll start to produce their flowers. So there's not a lot of downtime for really avid gardeners.
709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Those are the numbers if you want to call us to talk to Todd here for Gardening Day. The signal at cbc.ca. You can text us 709-327-8206. And I know there are people listening right now who are thinking, Adam, I did text you and I did email you and we're waiting. And here we are right now. We're going to get to those. Email number one. Here, do you want to? Oh, you're closer today.
I'm closer. I can look at it myself.
Closer
maybe.
seat. So here, I can. This is the picture. So it looks like it's a root that's got some yellow in it and another dirty old root. And so here's what it says. It's from Judith. And I can show you the pics again if you want. I had a prolific rhubarb patch for many years until this year when I did not have a good crop. So I dug up the patch and found many of the roots were rotten and yellow inside. See attached pictures. So my questions are, 1, what has happened? What has attacked my rhubarb? Is it okay to replant rhubarb in the same place again? Should I get new roots? If not, can I dig the soil out and put it elsewhere in the garden? Or is there something in it that will affect other plants? Greatly appreciated, Judith.
Well, I know the roots. I'm trying to think now because it's been years since I've ever dug up my rhubarb plants. And I have rhubarb I've had for, must be 50 years in the garden. I know the inside of the root is... I thought it was yellow. Okay. I thought that was natural. But I know this year rhubarb loves lots of moisture.
Yeah.
Right? So if the person who texted wasn't watering regularly, they probably would have had a much poorer crop from the rhubarb for this year. Also need to know is like how long did they have the plants? Like were they in this bed for many years and it's suddenly just this year that they're going?
Many years.
Many years. Well, it's sounding to me more like it might have been a factor of the fact that the summer was so darn dry that might have, because it seems like there's a one-off there. If they were going to be susceptible to some sort of disease, I would have thought they would have caught it before now. For the most part, rhubarb is pretty tough.
Yeah.
But the only thing they don't really like, they don't like a soggy soil, right? So if it's really wet and boggy, especially over the winter, that can lead to rot. But, if they were growing them for many years and then suddenly this year end up being the failure, and it could be that the roots just shriveled up because of the lack of water, because they do have a fairly succulent root, right? And that's all about storage of the water in the root. And if there's no water to store in the root, that could be what's partially leading to the problem as well. So I don't have a definitive answer to the situation. I'm thinking it's more of a matter of, I think I would leave the rhubarb well enough alone. I would mulch it nice and heavily, get some compost. Okay, so when I say mulch, I basically mean composting it, like old aged cow manure, sheep manure, chicken manure, whatever, because they're very, very heavy feeders. Mulch that now. You can do that in the fall of the year. That's all fine and dandy. And then see if it comes back in again in the spring and see what the situation there is. I don't think I'd rush to thinking that the plants are goners in this respect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it also... I'm just thinking back. You talked about the wetness of the soil. Like coming through winter, we didn't have a whole lot of snow buildup, and
that's right.
Coming at it. Like, could that have been a factor?
I mean, rhubarb is a crop that does really well with cold winters, right? So you're not going to be growing rhubarb like places like the middle of the South in the East, they say in the United States, because it's just too mild in winter. Rhubarb does need to have so many weeks of temperatures below freezing to keep them happy. So, I mean, we do have the ideal climate, really, in the big scheme of things for rhubarb, so it's not surprising it's been growing here for many, many moons. But like I said, in this situation here now, it was a dry-ish winter, went into a dry spring, went into even drier summer. And depending, of course, where this person is living, some parts of the island were like super, super duper dry. We're dry enough here on the Avalon, but I know in Central for a while they were even drier than us.
Yeah.
But then they did get some rain earlier on than what we did here in St. John's. So again, like I said, I don't think I'd rush.
Yeah.
This was an odd summer. It was an odd summer, and some things didn't do so well this year. Other things did much better. Like we have an apple at the garden which normally gets scab. This year, it was very little scab on it.
Right.
Last year, it was just horrible for scab. So, again, it was a funny growing season.
Yeah. So, follow the kind of tips there, and don't throw everything out, and hopefully next year it can rebound.
Yeah.
Hi all. Wondering if you have any hints for successfully saving heirloom tomato seeds. That's from Donna.
Not much. It's basically, collect the ripe tomatoes, take out the seeds, dry the seeds, make sure they're nice and dry before you store them away. I think they can be stored dry, at room temperature, but they say that if you keep them in a refrigerator, they'll last longer. But the thing is, they have to make sure they're good and dry, because you put them in the refrigerator and they're either a bit moist at all, they could end up going moldy.
Right.
Okay, but as long as they're kept dry, and on the cooler side, not necessarily as cold as a refrigerator, but like even if you have like an unheated basement where the temperature doesn't drop below freezing, they can be stored there for the winter.
Hi, Adam and Todd. I have 3 young grape vines. 2 even gave me tiny grapes this year. They are planted 6 to 8 feet apart. I'm wondering how I should give them their space. How deep or shallow are their roots? What kind of ground cover can I use around them, or should it be mulch?
I think I would go with a mulch. I would at the garden we use a compost for everything for the most part. Grapes are not particularly heavy feeders, and they can actually grow pretty good in relatively poor soil. When I've been to vineyards on the mainland, and was quite surprised at how rocky the soil was. I was thinking, gosh, maybe we could grow them if we only had longer, hotter summers. But they're not particularly deeply rooted in the big scheme of things. If they had them 6 to 8 feet apart, yeah, I would go at 8 for sure, to give them a bit of space, because they can get pretty darn big, But now, that said, the grapes really respond well to heavy pruning. All right, and the heavier you prune them, the more grapes you oftentimes get. And like I said, I prune like nobody's business on the one we have in the greenhouse up to work. But we also have 2 outside, but one of them is a wine grape, so I just grow it as a novelty more than anything else. They do ripen, but they taste absolutely horrid. And this year I planted a Concord, so that one, I do know people who get that to ripen in Newfoundland. It's your standard everyday grape, the old flavor of grape and new grape soft drink you used to get years ago.
Yeah, right on.
I'm dating myself. And but now that's only a young plant, only putting it out this year. But already in one season, that plant now is over, I'd say it's close to almost 8 feet across. So they grow pretty darn fast here in our climate. But that's okay, because I'm going to prune that back quite severely come the spring of the year. And I will do that on a yearly basis. So I think I'll have no problem. Right now it's planted about 8 feet from the original wine grape that we have. So I think 8 feet is a good distance to go with. And again, that said, I know a friend in Rocky Harbor, and they have, I think it was 4 varieties of grapes growing on the outside of their shed, and I think they're only planted like 5 feet apart.
Okay.
And they're big, robust plants, but again, they prune them heavy, right? So you can get away with a closer distance if you prune on a regular basis.
Sarah Zarell is on the line, calling for Portugal Cove. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Questions or comments on the grow season?
I have a question, actually, because Todd had mentioned garlic earlier.
Yep.
And likewise, my garlic was harvested ages ago and is in dry storage waiting to be planted.
Yep.
I did notice my garlic this year was a little bit smaller than last year. Usually I have really good success with big, juicy cloves. Wondering if you can just kind of review how to prep the soil to set us up for success for next year.
Right. Okay. So garlic, when you're planting your cloves, you really want to plant them about 4 to 6 inches deep. Okay. So they do require a relatively deep soil to keep them happy. Now is a good time actually to mix in any kind of organic material, any kind of compost, manures. You can dig that into the soil now, because you're not going to be planting the garlic for another 3, maybe even 4 weeks yet. So you have plenty of time then for that organic material to get basically get the worms and things in your soil to start to mix that organic material into the existing soil. I would make sure the soil depth is at least 8, preferably 10 to 12 inches if you can get away with it. We grow all our garlic in raised beds, so the soil up there is at least 10 inches deep, maybe even to 12.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So I think that's the best bet here for Newfoundland, and garlic does really, really well in raised beds. And when we plant them out, like I said, I plant ours probably about 4 to 6 inches deep, and probably about maybe 4 to 6 inches apart. I just sort of do it by taste. Now, ours this year was also a bit smaller, but I'm blaming on the fact that we didn't have as much moisture for the growing season, and because last year they seemed to be bigger than what they were this year. But all things considered, they were still a good crop. We did get a good crop, even though they were maybe a titch bit smaller than what they were in previous years. But like I said, I'm just going to blame that on the drought.
Right.
I'll make the same. I'll reach the
there
same
you go.
conclusion. All right. Thanks very much. That was helpful.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. I love garlic grown, like when you grow it yourself, or like my folks grow garlic too. It is so nice.
Well, it's funny that I've talked to people who grow garlic, and they say, "Oh, my garlic's sprouting up in the fall of the year, right?" So they were finding the garlic was starting to shoot up like in November. That's never ever happened to me. And in fact, it's like well into the spring, and I'm thinking, "Gosh, did my garlic die over the winter?" And it's like forever. I mean, the tulips and the daffodils are up 4 or 5 inches high, and they're still not a gig out of the garlic, and then all of a sudden they appear. Right, so I think it's probably because I'm planting mine deeper. Yeah. And I think even when it comes to growing things like tulips and daffodils in your garden, I think a lot of gardeners don't plant them deep enough. Right. So I think you'd be hard pressed to plant them too deep in our climate. With the soil situation we have here in Newfoundland, anyway, it's quite shallow. But I usually do put the garlic down like closer probably to 6 inches. So that's probably what's delaying their germination in the spring there. But I'm still harvesting them by the big early part of August. So it doesn't seem to delay them anything in that regards.
So if I've got a raised bed that's been growing stuff all summer, but I want to come later this fall, I want to plant some garlic in there. Am I what's the best with the existing stuff that is there?
Well, really, I mean, you can. So if it's aged manure, or aged compost, I mean, you can dig that in like just a couple of days before you're ready to plant, right? So if your raised bed right now has things like lettuce or, whatever.
We got like Swiss chard. We still have some perilla leaves we're using.
Exactly, right? So just dig that up. Make sure you dig in lots of organic material back into that bed. Because the garlic is going to start rooting in the fall, right? So it wants to have the nutrients then. And then generally once the plants are up probably about 6 inches high in the spring, I'll give them a shot then like a 6-12-12, just to give them that extra boost.
Cool.
And that generally then will help the plants grow that much better, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for that. It's nice to get the personalized advice here on the show for what I'm doing in my backyard. Richard Whitaker's on the line from Portugal Cove. Hello.
Hey, how are you guys today?
Good, sir. How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I'm
good.
Up to my ears in different things. I wanted to give a shout out for the evening primroses, which grow wild in the province. Todd will know about those.
Yeah.
Some of them are really, really, spectacular when they get going. I've got a little group there now that I picked up some seeds from somewhere on the roadside, probably about 2.5 feet tall or something like that, and completely covered with beautiful yellow blooms,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Todd, you'll know that they can tolerate really rough conditions as well.
Oh, yes. They can grow in pretty poor soils, and they can tolerate a lot of salt too.
Yeah, and I'm fooled up one time because there was a very short variety that was growing on a driveway of my, what farm we had, and I dug that up instead of taking the seed, waiting for the seeds, and I lost it. So, but it was a gorgeous orangey yellow color, you know.
Nice. So
that's one of the things. The second one was, and you were talking about rhubarb earlier, and it reminds me that I'm mucking around now with poking the odd thing into my flower beds instead of, a vegetable garden per se. put some rhubarb in this spring, and it's doing, it's picked up well, and people might want to think about that a bit. It's in and of itself colorful and interesting. And things like purple kale and cabbage and so on. All this, there's a lot of stuff you can do.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's basically sort of what we had intentioned when we had the potager garden put in place up at the garden, was trying to grow fruits and vegetables as ornamentals. So that way you're getting the best of both worlds. It looks attractive, but it's still edible. And, the last few years now we've been growing a purple kale called Labrador. And it's a tall kale as opposed to a little short one. Now, there are little short ones that look almost like big giant roses. But this one's a very tall one. It gets up probably about 2 feet high. It looks spectacular right now in the garden, a really dark purple. And this year I planted leeks in between them. So right now, I can be harvesting my kale. I'll be harvesting the leeks now probably towards the end of October before they're going to be big enough. But right now, the blue-green leaves of the leeks growing up through the dark purple leaves of the kale, it's so attractive, right? So, I got an edible garden that looks attractive this time of the year, but at the same time, I'm actually able to harvest it as well.
Yeah, I think, some other things that I might try, and I grow them elsewhere, but next year is some things like peas and scarlet runner beans,
Sure, yeah. Scarlet runners are very attractive on their own.
Climb up the shrubs and so on.
Yep, for sure. And even things, if you got a bit of fencing somewhere, even just the green peas growing up and sort of, scrambling up through shrubs, at least you'll get a few pods out of it and that.
Yep, and they attract various insects and so on.
Exactly.
And so it's all good, basically.
There you go.
I've been tinkering with stuff for God knows how long. I think I'm probably one of the first, if not the first person to grow corn in the province, and I just grew it from seed indoors to start with, and planted it out later, probably about 1980 or so.
Okay.
And since then, of course, farmers are doing it well.
Now they're doing it almost commercially. Of course, a lot. What's happened now too, when we're referring back to this diversity, is the fact that there's a lot of breeders now breeding for corn in short season areas. We've been growing. I only started growing corn at the garden 2 years ago, but it's been a great success. I've been really, really pleased at how well the corn has been doing up there. And the newer varieties of corn now don't get nearly so tall, because I know years ago I grew corn in my own personal garden, and they were like 8 feet tall. And the first bit of wind you had, boom, they were down on the ground, right? Hopeless. Whereas the newer varieties today now seem to top off at about 4.5, 5 feet, right? And so they seem to have stronger stalks, much more wind tolerant, and I harvested the corn. Oh my gosh, the first corn ears, I guess now must be at least 3 weeks ago, right? So
it was the same thing.
Yeah.
So that you especially if you start them earlier indoors, you got that extra.
Yeah. We started ours, but not too much, because I found this year we started them too early. And the plants were a bit large, and they actually went into a bit of a shock when I transplanted them out. The previous year, the plants were only 2 or 3 inches high, and they seemed to take the transplanting far, far better.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that, at least, I'm a Brit by origin, and one of the things there was the hotbed, where you buried a bunch of something that would compost underneath your...
Right. Well, I know out in the ghouls, they often usually have the corn beds covered in plastic, right? And they make little slits into the plastic. So that plastic is warming up the soil, because it's oftentimes when it comes to some of these crops, it's not so much they need warm air at the leaves, they need the warmth in the soil, right? So squashes, pumpkins, things along those lines really respond good if they got a nice warm soil, especially when they're first starting to grow early in the season. Not so bad once the middle of summer comes. But, early, like in late May, early June, when they're first starting to put out the transplants, having that plastic on the soil surface can make that soil several degrees warmer, and that makes all the difference to the new transplants.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that can help is that, and this may sound stupid, but rocks retain heat.
Yep.
When you plant something beside a rock, and they also, of course, water drains down beside them and this kind of thing.
Yep.
that can help sometimes. And I remember taking a group of people up to Bay de Verde, and the only green grass was in little tiny dips beside rocks.
There you go. Well, we do the same thing. We do the same thing in our rock garden. So I'm growing plants up against a rock. One plant in particular is a plant called red hot poker, and it comes from the Drakensbergs in South Africa. And put in an open garden, it may or may not survive, but I've discovered that if I plant it right next to a rock, it's thriving. Right? So that extra bit of heat and better drainage makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Anyway, there are just some things, you can tinker around quite a bit. And,
definitely.
If it doesn't work, so what?
Exactly. That's what we do as gardeners.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually grows figs. He brings them indoors in the winter and sticks them out in the summer.
There you go. That's perseverance.
Well, they're pretty ornamental, I guess, in their own way. All right, take care now.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Whitaker. Dick Whitaker there, folks. That's rapid fire. We've got, semi-rapid fire. We've got 4 minutes. Question from Don. Wonderful program. Well, that's not the question. That's the statement. So thank you for that, Don. How to keep and no one and look, it does say it, by the way. Wonderful program, right there. It does. I'm not lying. How to keep fresh garlic? How to keep fresh garlic over winter? I had a great crop this summer.
Okay, I find garlic lasts pretty good as long as you keep it relatively warm and dry. That's I have a little garlic bowl, I don't know, like pot, I suppose you call it, and I keep my garlic in there. And my gosh, the garlic can last for months in that. It's absolutely amazing. So the main thing is don't let it damp. It's got to be dry, right? Put it in a dry spot that's warm, and generally it's not a problem.
And congrats on the bumper crop of garlic. Here's another one. Years ago, a neighbor showed me black dogberry with leaves attached. It came from Bay Despair. At Grenfell, it was keyed out a cross between dogberry and chokeberry. It's a bit sweeter than our native dogberries.
Yep. Yeah, so that actually, where I've seen those most commonly on the islands on the Burin Peninsula. So, and I think they call them, I'm not sure if they call those catberries or they call them, it's what they call a dogberry, and what we have, they call a catberry. I'm not sure what story is there. But anyway, they do have their own name down the Burin Peninsula for these. And so they're a naturally occurring hybrid between a dogberry and a chokeberry. And you get the best of both worlds. So the plants are more like a really large shrub, but the fruit are a really dark wine red color.
Right on.
We have one at the garden up there. And now I've never eaten it. Well, I have tried it, and it tastes absolutely horrid. But
I was just like, I've been thinking of that combination. It doesn't sound...
now, maybe it might make a better wine. I have no idea. I'm not into dogberry wine. That's not for the faint of heart. But but anyway, so there is a natural occurring hybrid. It does exist. Okay. Like I said, it's more common on the Burin Peninsula than anywhere else.
Chris in Torbay wants to know, should you rotate a garlic bed?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And in fact, all the veggies we grow at the garden are all in raised beds. And each year I keep track of what veggie I grew in that bed that particular year. And I make sure there's a different kind of veggie growing there in the following year. Right? So that's a good practice. That cuts down on insect problems, cuts down disease problems. And I'll add in here quickly that if you have carrot rust fly, say if that's an issue in your garden, we used to have a real bad problem with it at the Botanical Garden. I now only grow carrots every second year, and I've not had a problem at all whatsoever. Right. The carrots are absolutely perfect. All right, so just by skipping a year, I didn't leave the bed fallow. Right, some farmers will do that and just leave the bed fallow. I just grew a different crop there, but I just grow the carrots every second year, and that seems to control the issues with the carrot rust fly.
All right, 30 seconds left. Last email, my garlic, about 150 heads, was big again this year. I used 6-12-12 compost and manure on the advice of Ross Travers. Yep. I mean, great person to get advice from. I have been growing it in the same bed for 5 to 6 years now. Okay. This is usually frowned upon, but it's working well so far. Should I move it to another area this year?
Well, you may be if you're fertilizing and you're adding extra organic material, you can probably get away with it, no problem. Because, people grow tulips and daffodils in the same place in their garden year after year after year, right? So, and there's not a lot of disease or pest problems with garlic, so you can probably get away with it. Other veggies, you might not be so fortunate.
All right. We're out of time. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem. My pleasure.
As we get down there for gardening days for the season, everyone, only a couple of days left. The last one will be mid-October. Tomorrow on the show, we are talking climate change and health impacts. So heat, drought, wildfires, impacts on health, and solutions on for individuals and at the community level. And we will have 3 doctors to talk about it tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye.